We're talking about a legal and diplomatic firestorm, a sitting U.S. president going head-to-head with the world's most famous public broadcaster. And this isn't just a fight, it's a battle with absolutely massive consequences for journalism, for politics, and for the entire special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. And the stakes? Well, they could not be higher. We're talking about a lawsuit for $10 billion. That's a figure that's not just designed to get damages, it's designed to grab your attention and signal that this is all-out war. And just listen to the language in the lawsuit itself. It is absolutely explosive. These are the words Donald Trump's legal team used to describe a BBC documentary. It really sets the stage for an unprecedented, no-holds-barred confrontation. So you gotta ask, how did we even get here? How did one single piece of journalism trigger a crisis so big that top executives had to resign and it became a major international incident? Well, that is exactly what we are gonna break down right now. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's December 2025, and a massive lawsuit lands in a Florida federal court. And the target? The BBC. The reason? A documentary that aired just before the 2024 election, which the plaintiff claims was deceptively edited specifically to damage his reputation. Now, at the absolute heart of this $10 billion case is a single editorial choice. A choice that, when you boil it down, involved making nearly an entire hour of a speech just vanish. The technique they used is called splicing. And look, it's a super common tool in documentary filmmaking, right? You use it to condense long events. But in this case, the argument is that it wasn't used for brevity. The plaintiff says it was used to fundamentally and deliberately change the meaning of what was said. So let's really break this down, because it's pretty wild. The BBC took a clip from about 15 minutes into the January 6th speech where Trump says, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol." Okay. Then they completely cut out the next 55 minutes of the speech. Gone. And in those 55 minutes was the call to protest peacefully and patriotically. They then immediately spliced in a clip from over an hour into the speech, "We fight like hell." And that is the crucial point of the lawsuit. The plaintiff's team argues that by slamming those two clips together, separated by almost an hour in reality, the BBC transformed a general, rhetorical call to fight for your country into what sounds like a direct, literal command to use violence at the Capitol building right then and there. You know, this single edit didn't just spark a lawsuit. It actually triggered a complete institutional meltdown. And the story of how it all came to light reveals a crisis that had been festering inside the BBC long before it ever exploded into public view. And the speed of this collapse was just staggering. You have an internal warning memo in the summer of 2025, which was apparently ignored. Then, come November, a newspaper leaks that memo. The White House attacks, and within just a few days, the two top executives at the BBC are gone. And then comes the formal apology. We're talking a complete catastrophe in less than 2 weeks. And the fallout went right to the very top. Two of the most powerful people in British media, the Director-General Tim Davie and the news CEO Deborah Turnus, both resigned. This wasn't about a single bad edit anymore. This signaled a massive systemic failure. But here's where it gets really tricky. This is the critical nuance in the BBC's position. They've apologized for an error of judgment, right? They're admitting the edit was a mistake and it broke their own rules. But, and this is a huge but, they are fighting tooth and nail against the claim that this mistake legally counts as defamation. It's a really high-stakes legal strategy. We're sorry, but you can't sue us for it. So this all brings us to the courtroom in Florida, where Trump's legal team has launched this highly unusual two-pronged attack against the British broadcaster. So the legal strategy is fascinating. On one hand, you have a standard defamation claim, which is actually really hard to win. But on the other hand, they're also using a Florida consumer protection law. And this is clever. It's an attempt to reframe the BBC not as a news organization, but as a company that sold a defective product, the documentary, to consumers, which in turn damaged the Trump brand. Now, this raises a huge legal question, one you might be asking yourself. The documentary was made by the BBC, a UK company. So how in the world can a court in Florida possibly have any power over them? This question is the absolute core of the BBC's defense. Well, the plaintiff team has a three-part answer, and it goes like this. 1. The BBC came to Florida to film a lot of the documentary. 2, they allegedly distributed the final product in Florida through the BritBox streaming service. And 3, they allegedly defamed a Florida resident. Put it all together, they argue, and the Florida court absolutely has the right to hear this case. Believe it or not, this fight is way bigger than just a courtroom. It has spiraled into a full-blown diplomatic headache, and it's putting the famed special relationship between the US and the UK under some serious strain. I mean, just imagine being Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government right now. You're walking a razor-thin tightrope. Publicly, you have to defend a core British institution, but behind closed doors, they're reportedly telling the BBC, you have got to get your house in order. All while people back home are getting angry about the idea of their taxpayer money footing a massive legal bill. And this is having very real consequences. Reports are indicating that crucial negotiations for a big UK-US tech deal have completely stalled. Think about that. An editorial choice made in a London editing suite is now having a real-world impact on international trade. To really get the full picture here, we need to zoom out, because this lawsuit isn't just happening in a vacuum. It's actually the most prominent example of a much broader strategy of using massive lawsuits, what some people call lawfare, against major legacy media organizations. And when you look at it, the pattern becomes crystal clear. In 2025 alone, similar multi-billion-dollar lawsuits were filed against the New York Times, CBS, and ABC News. And when you see the reported settlements with CBS and ABC, it suggests this strategy can be pretty effective at forcing these big media companies to the negotiating table. And for the BBC, the timing of this could not possibly be worse. This massive lawsuit has landed right at the beginning of something called the Royal Charter Review. That's the once-a-decade process that will literally determine the BBC's entire future, including how and maybe even if it gets funded after 2027. And right now, everything is on the table. The UK government is openly looking at some really radical changes, from turning the BBC into a subscription service, just like Netflix, to completely overhauling how it's funded. This lawsuit, with its huge potential liability, just adds a ton of fuel to the fire for people who want to fundamentally change the institution forever. So, it all leaves us with this one critical question for our modern borderless media age. In a world where a documentary made in London can become the basis for a lawsuit in Florida, who really gets the final say on the story?